Hey everyone, this is Phil from Ashland. A lot of people have their favorite shell Cordovan color, whether it's the black or the color 8, but there's actually a lot of different shell Cordovan colors available, so I thought it'd be really awesome to go through some of those today, so check it out. So first up, we have the natural shell Cordovan. This happens to be our most popular color, and I think it's for good reason. All the natural shells tend to age amazingly and develop a great patina over time. So you can see this is one of the Johnny the Fox in natural shell Cordovan. It's actually our most popular style and our most popular color. But those shells can actually vary just a little bit in color because it is natural, and they don't put any stains onto the leather. So you can see that way. It looks similar to the wallet, but when you spin it, it looks a little bit darker. So the natural shells sort of change color directionally, and I think it's a really cool thing. So it's a nice piece of shell, a little thick. But again, the natural shells are most popular. I think it's just a beautiful lighter shade. That's really for the people that want something that changes over time. So up next is our second most popular, which is the black shell. So black kind of doesn't need much explaining because it is black. And it's quite non-transparent. So there's not much color variance in the black shells. They tend to be sort of what they are. But this is our most popular color, or one of our most popular colors, and I think it's for a good reason. It's just a classic, clean look. So that's a black shell. Up next is the classic Cordovan color, the color 8 shell. So a lot of people, when they hear the word Cordovan, they think of this color. It's actually a dark brown burgundy shade that may be difficult to translate in video here. But it's absolutely beautiful. This is a really beautiful piece. You can see pretty well there. But it's got a beautiful sort of oxblood shade. And again, that's the classic color. It's a really nice piece. Up next is my personal favorite, other than the natural. I love all of them, but color 4 is my personal favorite color. It's a reddish brown, more on the red side, or more on the brown side than red. And I'll spin this one around so you can see how it changes. You can see that direction, it almost looks like color 8. Whereas when I spin it, you see it start to slowly change more towards what I call a color 4. It's really more of a brown with reddish undertones. Absolutely beautiful. Nice shell there. Up next, a lot of people's favorite color. This is the whiskey shell Cordovan. The whiskey is not dissimilar from natural, but it tends to have more yellow undertones than the natural does, and it actually is a little bit darker. So I think of it as like a sort of golden natural shade, which is really nice. All right. Up next, not dissimilar from the whiskey, if we're trying to relate things to natural, this is the Amaretto. It's more of an orangey version of the natural. It should be a lot easier to see. It's really amazing how much color that color changes, the direction you go. And the reason that it's changing color is actually because the fibers of the shell go in one direction. So it's kind of like looking at a suede. When you brush a suede one direction, it looks dark, and when you brush it the other direction, it looks lighter. And that's the same sort of effect we're getting. Look how awesome that is. So actually the Apple Watch band I have, this started off as Amaretto, which is really crazy to think about, but I've worn this pretty hard. I go jogging with it, and I've worn it for 2 years, so you can really see how much that color changes over time. Amaretto is really cool. This is actually one of the more recent color additions that Horween started to offer. Up next is a really rare shell. This is where we're starting to get more and more rare. This is the green shell Cordovan. It's a beautiful shade. It's a pretty dark green. I'd say it's almost like a little bit bluish, like a bluish green. You can see we cut a couple pieces out of this one though. But green is really special. We don't get this very often, so that's a fun shade to look at. And up next, this one is stunning. This is the intense blue. What a beautiful color. It's actually looking, in my monitor here, it's looking a little more contrasty than it does in person. In person, it kind of has like a deep, like ocean color. It's got lighter blue undertones up here, like a slightly greenish blue coming up from underneath. But that is really special. And the way that I'm sort of creasing the leather and looking at it different directions, this is how we check color at the tannery. Because like I said, it's sort of directional, which is challenging. But wow, that one that's a really nice shell. They're all nice. Up next, again, one of the more recent color additions that Horween has had. This is the Garnet shell. Looks pretty similar to the color 4 that we were looking at a little bit earlier, but this one is more red than brown, I'd say. Although on the table there, it's starting to look pretty dark. Let's spin it a little bit. It's pretty light there. But it's more of I'd say this is red with a touch of brown, where the color 4 is brown with a touch of red. It's a really, really nice shade. Very cool. I actually think that one, the Garnet almost has like a little more orangey than the color 4. So here's a crazy thing that we've also cut a couple pattern pieces out of along the thin spots here. In the cutting video, Dan mentioned cutting from the flap. There's areas of the shells that tend to be thinner than others. We tend to get a lot of thickness up here, and then this section we call the flap, it tends to thin out. But this is the Ultraviolet, and wow, that is really striking in person. On my monitor here, again, it's a little more contrasty, so I'm hoping it comes through, but it's a very vivid, almost neon purple? I don't know, it's like a magenta. And actually this is very similar to the magenta shell color that Horween also makes. I don't happen to have one of those, but that looks pretty special. What a cool color. So that's a new one for Horween. Now we get really crazy. So years ago, I was going through the tannery and I thought that the color 8 looked cool, and this is color 8. But also I really like the random look of the backside, and this one is pretty beat up. But I picked this one because it gives you a sense of the different shades that we get on the reverse sides of the shells. So the color 8 reverse, oftentimes it's more of this lighter tan shade. We get a lot of those ink, like dye blotches coming across. So I think that's the cool part of it, these little patterns here. But you can see sometimes we get a little bit darker. But the reverse is pretty crazy the way that this ages. It almost develops its own finish over the top once you start polishing it. It gets really glassy and smooth. I think this is amazing. And we also do a lot of black reverse. And this is one of our darker variants of the black reverse. Again, it kind of changes in color. Sometimes we get these lighter shades here, and oftentimes we get these darker shades here. So the black reverse is really cool. Ages a similar way to the color 8 reverse, where you get that sort of glassy luster over the top. The more it sort of polishes itself in and fills itself in. And because these are vegetable tan leathers, you do get an amazing patina out of it. But the reason we call it reverse is because on this side it's black, and this is just waxes coming out, by the way. Here, give you a little trick. If you let your Cordovan sit too long, the amount of wax, there's such a high concentration of waxes that we tan into the leather that if you let it sit and the temperature in the room changes up and down, the waxes start to come back to the surface. And it's really cool because you can just polish it right back. This one's got quite a bit of wax. And this is similar to if you had some footwear made out of black shell. You can really see that, we call it bloom. That bloom comes right out, and it's almost like it acts as a self-polishing leather. So the black reverse is really cool. And now we get to the extremely crazy stuff. So this is black marble shell Cordovan. that we started releasing within the last year or so. This is a big hit. And you can see that just by looking at the whole shell itself, it's almost a shame that we don't have any huge pattern pieces. Like here's a fat Herbie. So if I were to cut this on a fat Herbie, you might cut an interesting pattern sort of there, so you get more context. But really when you start to get into smaller pattern pieces like a watch strap, you lose the context. And I think the context of the contrast in the leather is really cool. You can sort of see like the layers of finish that Horween's hand applied. And when they marble it, you start to see through more of those layers. So this one kind of is really funky. It goes from like a black to a greenish to a tan to a brown to a orangey, orangey brown to a reddish brown, sort of everything in between. So it's really, really unique and special. I love the marbled shell. And last but not least, this one is a beauty. This is color 8 marbled. And this one is particularly nice with the exception of a couple spots here that we would cut around. But wow, does that look cool. I've really never seen much of anything like this. And I love that layered color look. I can give you some. And you still get that luster that all the shells have, but you get more of that. Like, here's the luster. It's pretty shiny still. Looks like glass in person here. But you do have that amazing sort of varied layered finish look. It's stunning. So this has been a look at some of the Cordovan colors. This is not all of them. There's actually quite a few, but this just happens to be the ones that I have in stock. There's quite a wait list for shell Cordovan. Some of these shells that I pulled out today, we've been waiting for years for. So any shells that we are able to get our hands on are a special treat. And I happen to love all these colors. Gosh, it's so hard to pick a favorite, but the marbles are particularly special. If you like patina, again, the natural is really nice. I happen to like the color 4. I think there's really something for everybody. But you'll notice they're all kind of earth tones, maybe with the exception of the ultraviolet. It's kind of interesting. But if you have any questions or you want to see some other colors, maybe I can get my hands on them. I'm not sure. Let me know. All right, appreciate it, guys. Take care. Bye.